She gets too hungry for dinner at 8.
Frank Sinatra owned the most recognizable voice of the 20th century. He won Grammys, Oscars, hobnobbed with gangsters, and romanced the most beautiful women of his time. But behind the music, the sex, and the fame was a man with unbridled ambition and a thirst for power and control.
Frank didn't take any crap from anybody, and that was his motto.
In the next 2 hours, we'll focus on Frank's climb to power in the heyday of Hollywood, where he excelled on the soundstage and in the bedroom.
Well, he dated the world, for God's sake. You know, everybody wanted to be in his company.
He charmed and discarded Hollywood movie queens until he fell hard for tempestuous beauty Ava Gardner.
These were two of the most dysfunctional people probably of their time in show business, and they found each other.
But he also found ring-a-ding-ding with a group of pals called the Rat Pack.
It was anything you can think of that is fun. These guys were doing it.
And he built an amazing relationship to both the White House and the mob.
He had people that would do anything to satisfy him. They would probably even kill.
Through it all, the party never seemed to stop, and neither did the women.
He was crazy about her. She wrapped those long legs around him. He was a happy Italian.
And now, Frank Sinatra's Hollywood story will be told by friends, celebrities, and former lovers.
He was so unbelievably ambitious. He wanted to be the biggest thing in the world.
Over half a century, Sinatra virtually became the biggest thing in the world. But the ambitious star would leave behind a trail of broken hearts, broken noses, and broken dreams. This is an true Hollywood story of the man who did things his way.
Because he had something, boy. Yeah. Oh, he had balls.
The dream of being for life's ambition was to be the star. The public
The story was written by the untouchable team of Joan Kern and Oscar Hammerstein. I do hope you enjoy the song as you.
The date was December 30th, 1942. Franklin Delano Roosevelt was in the White House, the world was at war, and at the Paramount Theater in New York City, a 27-year-old Frank Sinatra took center stage and captured the hearts of a generation. Sinatra Mania was launched. America's first teen idol had arrived. The skinny kid from Hoboken, New Jersey, was every teenage girl's dream. Born on December 12, 1915, Frank was the only child of working-class Italian immigrants Dolly and Martin Sinatra. But Sinatra's relentless will to succeed would push him way beyond his humble beginnings. Longtime friend and business associate Nick Savano recalls the young singer's steely determination.
When he said he wanted to sing, the people in the neighborhood thought he was a little bananas. You know, they said, this guy a singer? But he made his mark, and every step of the way he knew where he was going.
In 1939, at the age of 24, Frank married his Hoboken sweetheart, Nancy Barbado.
She took care of all his fan clubs, because I remember it like it was yesterday. She would sit there and write all these people notes, and they got all their pictures signed by Frank.
Eventually, Frank and Nancy's hard work paid off, and that same year he joined one of the most popular swing bands of the day, led by trumpeter Harry James. Sinatra showed his moxie even as a beginner, according to former Capitol Records president Alan Livingston.
Harry James said, you got to change your name. And Frank said, you take the voice, you take the name, and he got up and walked away. And of course, James called him back. But he needed that job at the time. He didn't care. You do it his way.
From that time on, Sinatra would see that everything was done his way or no way. In 1940, Sinatra got his big break, singing with the Tommy Dorsey Band. The following year, Billboard magazine voted Frank the best male vocalist of the year. The 27-year-old singer was ready to take control of his destiny and strike out on his own. In December of 1942, Frank made that historic triumphant appearance at New York's Paramount Theater. The long buildup of Sinatra mania had paved the way for his biggest leap yet since leaving Hoboken, all the way to Hollywood. Sinatra was 28 years old when he took on the movie capital. Inking a 7-year deal with RKO Radio Pictures, Frank landed his first real acting role in 1943, playing himself in the comedy Higher and Higher. Despite his awkward appearance, the star radiated an irresistible sex appeal. Sinatra biographer J. Randy Taraborelli.
What he did have was an amazing charisma. He had a great sexual energy about him, and this was very important. Plus, he was singing the kinds of romantic songs that were very appealing.
So appealing that in 1943, Sinatra won a new recording contract with Columbia Records. It appeared the 29-year-old could do no wrong. By 1944, movie mogul Louis B. Mayer, head of MGM, signed the singer to a contract for $1.5 million, making Sinatra one of Hollywood's highest-paid actors.
I take great pleasure in presenting you this bronze bust of yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Mayer. I'm sincerely grateful to you and to the readers of Modern Screen magazine.
In 1944, Sinatra brought his young wife and the latest additions, daughter Nancy and son Frankie Jr., to California. Family or not, the popular singer immersed himself in the Hollywood scene.
He was always out, never home, and, you know, it's very hard to pinpoint where your life is going when you have all these women thrown at you.
Actress Debbie Reynolds.
Frank Sinatra attracted women. They flocked to him. He was very exciting, charming. He liked women, and you felt like a real wonderful woman when you were with him. He treated you that way.
Despite his philandering, Sinatra was Hollywood's golden boy. In 1945, the singer teamed up with dance legend Gene Kelly to star in one of MGM's most successful musical comedies, Anchors Aweigh.
He came in as a big singing star. He was a big recording artist. And of course he had never been a dancer, and I thought he was fabulous when he danced in Anchors Aweigh with Gene Kelly. I couldn't believe it. When I see that movie to this day, I absolutely applaud and cheer.
While Sinatra graced musicals, he also showed a serious side. In 1945, Sinatra starred in and produced The House I Live In, a short film on racial and religious tolerance.
Do you know what this wonderful country is made of? It's made up of 100 different kind of people, and 100 different ways of talking, and 100 different ways of going to church. But they're all American ways.
The film won him a special honorary Oscar, but his progressive views riled conservative members of the press, who called him a communist, one of many labels to haunt Sinatra in years to come. But name-calling didn't stop the star from enjoying his newfound Hollywood delights.
Back in the Hoboken days, Frank's extramarital affairs were with hookers and dancers and women of ill repute. But when he got to Hollywood, things changed. We're talking about a big change here.
Once again, ignoring his marriage vows, Sinatra, in 1946, took aim at one star in particular, the blonde bombshell, Lana Turner.
Just to prove there's no request too large, fellas, here she is, Lana Turner.
Hello, fellas.
Known as the Sweater Girl, Lana had all the skills to arouse the hunger of males like Sinatra.
Oh, well, here it is, fellas. Beautiful. A porterhouse steak 3 inches thick. The only one in captivity.
Lana being a beautiful lady, you know, things happen. You start to talk, you start to meet, you start to go out.
Nightclub owner Tom Seward, one of Turner's old boyfriends, remembers how Sinatra moved in.
I guess it was about a year after I was gone with her that Frank wanted to take her out, which he did. In fact, I think he did while I was actually taking her out.
Sinatra even built a love nest for his newest flame.
Frank bought an apartment, and he went in there and outfitted it and stocked it with whiskey and everything else. And Lana took one look at it. She didn't like it.
But Sinatra had little patience for willful women. Frank called it quits after the couple's brief affair. And in a move that would later become familiar, Frank went crawling back to his wife.
His affairs were like off the cuff. He didn't care. That's why I felt he always had that bond for Nancy Sr. There was something there that corrected his thinking in the process, and he'd wind up going home alone.
Fellas, I wish I could cook a big steak for each and every one of you.
In his mind, this was a matter between him and these women that he was seeing, and it had nothing to do with his feelings for Nancy or his devotion to Nancy. It had nothing to do with Nancy at all.
As Sinatra's extramarital ardor was cooling, Frank's public relations nightmare was just heating up.
Get me London, United Press Bureau.
His philandering brought negative press.
There was an awful lot to write about where Frank Sinatra was concerned. He was beating up people, he was womanizing, he was speaking his mind, he was pretty much doing it his way back in the beginning of his career.
Coming up, storms on the horizon for the illustrious voice, more battles with the press, the start of a long career slide, and a tempestuous beauty whom no one could tame.
She was a great gal. She was a real gal, you know, and just so beautiful.
And later, My Way or No Way takes Sinatra to the brink of death.
Who knows what is going through the mind of a man who is so obsessed with a woman that he's willing to give it all up for her.
In 1943, Frank Sinatra's voice brought him fame, fortune, and a Hollywood movie contract. 28-year-old Frank eagerly sampled Hollywood's high life, including Tinseltown's most glamorous starlets. Frank Sinatra had two weaknesses: platinum blondes and gangsters. Sinatra biographer J. Randy Taraborelli.
When the opportunity arose for him to meet Lucky Luciano, who was, you know, sort of the big cheese of mobsters at that time, Frank took it. He went to Havana to meet this guy. What he didn't know was that he was the special guest of a mobster convention.
Sam Giancana, nephew and namesake of Chicago godfather Sam Mooney Giancana, describes the 1947 gathering.
It was primarily an opportunity for various people to see Lucky Luciano, who hadn't seen him. It was obviously an opportunity for Frank Sinatra to see some of these people. And the primary reason they were all there was really to deal with Las Vegas.
Pre-Castro Cuba provided a gambling mecca for the mob. But the Godfathers were eager to expand their empire to Las Vegas. Sinatra was unaware of this when he went to Havana. But what happened there changed his life.
Frankly, didn't know what to do. He felt that if he left, he would be looked at as a wimp. But he knew that if he stayed, it would get out to the public that he had attended this convention, that he was socializing with these goons. Well, Frank did what Frank was wont to do. He stayed. And he had one hell of a good time.
The press showed no mercy. The headlines read, "Shame Sinatra." In Los Angeles, one reporter for the Daily Mirror, Lee Mortimer, was particularly vicious. Hollywood columnist James Bacon remembers how the situation led to a violent confrontation.
Lee had printed some nasty things about him in his column, and Frank was going in Ciro's one night, and Lee just happened to be going in at the same time. So Frank just took a poke at him.
Longtime Sinatra friend Nick Savano.
Frank didn't take any crap from anybody. And that was his motto. And you had to behave around him, otherwise he got tough.
Sinatra was arrested and charged with assault and battery. Charges later dropped when the actor apologized. Privately, however, Sinatra maintained Mortimer had provoked the fight, but the fracas would herald Sinatra's lifelong battles with a power beyond his control, the press.
He wanted the truth printed. As he gave you an interview, he didn't want you to elaborate on it unless he knew what you were saying. See, he was too sincere with the press. He trusted them, and when they got out of focus, he went to work on them.
Public spats were the least of Frank's problems. In 1948, the 33-year-old actor received less than flattering reviews for his performance as a priest in The Miracle of the Bells, and didn't fare much better in The Kissing Bandit. With it all, Sinatra's popularity started to fade. His luck changed briefly in 1948 when his third child, Christina, was born, and the following year when his hit MGM musical On the Town was released. But Sinatra's Hollywood success was short-lived. In 1950, the 35-year-old Sinatra was suspended by MGM after making an unkind joke about the sexual relationship between MGM studio chief Louis B. Mayer and his girlfriend, Ginny Simms. Plus, his records were not selling. Actress Ruta Lee recalls the singer's tough times.
He was really having a very bad time. He couldn't get arrested in movies, and the singing career was going down the tubes.
Frank didn't get much help from Columbia Records' new president, Mitch Miller. Former record executive Alan Livingston explains.
Mitch had an idea that Frank should try and move into not the kind of songs that he sang so well, the standards, the beautiful songs, but to move in what was happening in the music business in those days with a lot of novelty songs and unusual songs. And he gave him things like Mama Will Bark, and they were not for Frank. And Frank didn't sell at all with those songs.
Despite the problems in his career, Frank was soon destined for another explosion. Her name was Ava Gardner.
You know, this is no Sir Galahad who loves from afar. This is a two-legged boa constrictor.
In the 1950s, Ava Gardner was one of MGM's biggest stars, actress Janet Leigh.
I had met Ava before she and Frank were together at MGM, at the studio. And she was a great gal. She was a real gal, just so beautiful. I mean, she'd take your breath away.
Married twice before, once to actor Mickey Rooney and then to bandleader Artie Shaw, Ava was outspoken and headstrong.
Ava was just like Frank. At the drop of a hat, she'd want to go out 3 o'clock in the morning. You know, she'd find an opening nightclub, and they'd go.
She gets much too hungry to wait around for dinner at 8. She adores the theater, but she doesn't arrive late.
They had a certain passion that probably never could be ever found again between two people. Sometimes we just have that one great love.
The couple's very public affair caught the attention of the press and the studio bosses. Ava Gardner's nephew, Billy Grimes.
The romance between Ava and Frank was harmful both to Frank and to Ava, and also it was harmful to Metro, who had both of them under contract.
The brazen romance constantly threatened to ruin Sinatra's marriage. Nancy Sinatra, Frank's first wife, tried to close her eyes to the situation.
Nancy stuck by Frank even though it was a public humiliation for her to have to put up with pictures of Frank and Ava together all over the place. And this was bad. This was bad for everybody. It was bad for Frank's image. It was bad for Frank's reputation. It was bad for Frank's marriage.
Every detail of the affair stoked gossip mills, along with reports of the frequent fights.
Their personalities were such that they could not live with each other, apart from when they were in bed. You know, that was fine.
Well, I don't know that any of us could judge, but of course when people are too much alike, you know, so volatile and so filled with life, that sometimes it doesn't work. There's just too much passion and emotion between them.
He met his Waterloo, you know. She was exactly like him.
Finally, on Valentine's Day, 1950, Nancy Sinatra filed for legal separation from her husband of 11 years. The pressure of his illicit romance eventually was starting to take its toll. In April of 1950, the 35-year-old Sinatra canceled a New York nightclub engagement. His throat had hemorrhaged.
He tried to sing, and he couldn't. And this was frightening because focus and attention was shifted to Ava and to his obsession with Ava and to the fireworks of their relationship.
This obsession drove Frank to Europe, where Ava was filming Pandora and the Flying Dutchman. To his shock, Sinatra discovered that Ava had taken another lover, her co-star bullfighter, Mario Cabra.
Ava, you know, would take off with some other guy, you know. It was very unnerving for Frank, and he was very unhappy. I think the best description of Ava is that she was a nymphomaniac. And I've never met a nymphomaniac I didn't like.
The Senatorial Crime Investigation Committee shifts to New York.
In 1950, Sinatra returned from Europe with his life in ruin. Rejected by Ava and strapped for cash, he now found himself in the midst of a congressional probe into organized crime and his own alleged mob ties.
You know, a lot of people thought there was some connection between the mob guys or the wise guys and the singers, and there was no connection. It was that we befriended them. After all, they owned the nightclubs. We worked for them. They paid us.
Though Congress found nothing on Sinatra, his career was at an all-time low. After a bitter fight with Frank, Ava called it quits. Desperate and alone, he allegedly took an overdose of sleeping pills. Sinatra later denied reports that he was attempting suicide, and soon he and Ava were together again.
These were two of the most dysfunctional people probably of their time in show business, and they found each other. Well, kaboom.
When the True Hollywood story continues, Frank Sinatra gets the woman of his dreams and the chance of a lifetime.
He had that streak in him that I'm going to get up on top again if it's the last thing I do, and he did it.
And later, the actor and his Rat Pack pals host some of the wildest parties of the century.
It was anything you can think of that is fun. These guys were doing it.
On the silver screen, Frank Sinatra was a musical comedy star. But off-screen, the actor stepped into a very different role. Behind his piercing blue eyes burned an uncontrollable lust for women, a desire that would taint his public image, destroy his first marriage, and throw his professional life into chaos. By 1951, 36-year-old Frank Sinatra's career was bottoming out. He was no longer a box office draw, and his rocky romance with movie queen Ava Gardner had made his personal life a living hell. The headstrong actress gave her take on the battle of the sexes on a 1951 radio show with friend and actor Dick Haymes.
Don't you think women often put important ideas in men's heads and then let the men think it came out of their own giant brains?
No.
And I suppose you don't think that when men finally get around to proposing that it was really the girl who put the idea in their head in the first place?
Oh, Ava, what are you trying to do?
I'm just trying to have you face facts.
By mid-1951, Frank was doing everything in his power to speed up his divorce from wife Nancy Barbado, even moving to Nevada to expedite the legal process. Sinatra later told actress Ruta Lee he had one thing on his mind.
I spent a lot of time with Frank, and I'd have dinner with him, and we'd talk, and he'd hold my hand and talk to me. But you know, he talked about Ava.
In November of 1951, 36-year-old Frank got his wish. Nancy agreed to the divorce. After 11 years of marriage, the Sinatras parted ways. But the former Mrs. Sinatra didn't leave empty-handed. She got custody of their 3 children, their glamorous home, assorted furs and jewelry, a 1950 Cadillac, and a percentage of the star's income for life. Longtime Sinatra friend Nick Savano.
He always said to me, I'd rather she have all the money because I'll spend it. And he did. But this was Frank. He was very generous, and rightfully so, because she deserved it. She worked hard all those years.
With the ink on the divorce papers barely dry, Frank and Ava Gardner planned to be married on November the 7th, 1951. To avoid the press, Frank and Ava hoped to tie the knot at a friend's home in Philadelphia, but the night before the wedding, the bride-to-be was in distress. Ava's nephew, Billy Grimes.
They had a real argument the day before the wedding.
Ava had received an anonymous note from a woman claiming she was having an affair with Frank. But after Sinatra denied the romance, the lovers patched things up, and Ava marched down the aisle to become the second Mrs. Frank Sinatra.
At a midnight film preview, Frank Sinatra heads a list of celebrities, including his new wife, Ava Gardner, and Robert Q. Lewis.
Frank's second marriage was the only positive note in his life during the early 50s. His film Double Dynamite had bombed. Frank's CBS television show was on its way out. And that same year, despite the Hollywood hoopla, his latest movie, Meet Danny Wilson, flopped. To make matters worse, in June of 1952, Columbia Records dropped the singer. Alan Livingston, former record executive, explains.
At that time, Frank was in serious trouble. He had no contract with any record company. Nobody wanted him.
For the one-time national sensation, it was one of his darkest hours.
He was broke. He was so not in demand that he could not get a job in a nightclub.
Hello, fellas. We had some guests of honor here the other night.
Veteran entertainer Dinah Shore was a longtime friend, but even she couldn't help when Sinatra attempted a guest appearance on her 1952 television show. Bud Yorkin was the director.
And we knew that he'd lost his voice. He had just lost it. But I felt badly for him. He was not the Frank Sinatra that we all know and love, and before and after. He was in a part of his life that he was in trouble.
In the summer of 1952, the 37-year-old singer's difficulties drove him to extremes. His personal battles with Ava became too painful to bear. The couple's fights led to an agonizing breakup. Sinatra was at his lowest, and his wounds were deep. At a friend's apartment in New York, Frank saw no way out. He inhaled gas from a kitchen stove. Sinatra biographer J. Randy Taraborelli.
Who knows what was going through Frank Sinatra's mind when he put his head in an oven, because he couldn't have Ava Gardner the way he wanted her, and so he hoped the gas would just take his life away.
We did know why. You know, we felt he had such a love for this lady. We used to call him the cat. He had 9 lives. You know, this guy, he would do things that you wouldn't dream that he'd come out of it. And he'd come out of it.
Once more, Sinatra pulled back from the brink of self-destruction. Frank and Ava reconciled, but she was soon off to Africa to star in the movie Mogambo. While flying across the Atlantic to join his wife on location, Frank read a script. It was adapted from the bestseller From Here to Eternity, a World War II epic drama.
Frank had read the book, and he saw that part of Maggio, and he said, I've got to have that part. And when Frank goes after something, it's hard to stop him.
Sinatra desperately wanted the part of Private Angelo Maggio, a streetwise kid from Brooklyn. Hollywood columnist James Bacon.
Frank wanted that part because it was just something he knew he could do.
Ava Gardner agreed. She decided to use her Hollywood connections to better her husband's chances.
Basically, she felt very strongly that if Frank didn't get this role, he was going to make her crazy, and he might even kill himself.
The movie queen flexed her Hollywood muscle and called the film producer Harry Cohn.
She called Harry Cohn at Columbia, and she said, you're doing a picture called From Here to Eternity, and I want you to hire my husband.
Frank rushed back from Africa to audition for the part. Cohn, however, was less than enthusiastic.
Sinatra showed up there one day, and Harry Cohn, being a tough guy, says, what does that bum want, you know? And Joni says he wants to do Maggio and From Here to Eternity. And Harry says, he says, I already got someone in the park.
But Frank made Harry Cohn an offer he couldn't refuse.
Frank said the magic word. He says, I'll do it for nothing. Well, right away, Harry Cohn was interested.
Frank got his audition. Meanwhile, on location in Africa, Ava found out she was pregnant with Frank's child. Without Frank's knowledge, the actress traveled from Africa to London to end her pregnancy.
Ava Gardner actually claimed that she had 2 abortions. Others close to Ava and Frank say she only had 1. But the mystery of how many abortions Ava Gardner had is like mystery of her personality and why she did some of the things that she did to Frank.
With no idea about Ava's decision, Sinatra decided to return to Africa and his wife at Christmas 1952.
He borrowed money from everybody that would give him a dime to fly over to Africa when she was doing Magambo. And he brought a Christmas tree, and he brought gifts for everybody, and she was kind of ho-hum.
It was during the Christmas holiday that Frank learned for the first time about Ava's abortion. Those were dark days for Sinatra, as he later told his friend Ruta Lee.
And it just devastated him and broke his heart, you know, and oh, I get chills and tears when I think about it now, but what a tremendous loss it was for him.
Frank left Africa a broken man, but in the midst of all his sadness, he got the call he had dreamed of, the chance to play Private Angelo Maggio. Money didn't matter.
Sinatra's only paid scale. I think, what was it, $1,500 a week was the scale in those days. $300 a day, yeah. Whereas, you know, he might have had to pay another actor $100,000 or $200,000.
In March of 1953, filming began on location in Hawaii.
Sinatra put into his performance this volatile guy, this sweet guy on the outside, but don't mess with the inside part of him where, you know, he could be tough, this little guy.
The actor completed his work on From Here to Eternity in 41 days. With a promising performance in the can, 38-year-old Frank was ready to make music. But Sinatra's failed records, movies, and television show made him a lousy bet.
He was in a poor emotional state, and everybody wrote him off. And the question was whether his voice had held up or not.
Singer Al Martino remembers seeing Sinatra waiting to meet with record executives at Capitol Records. To Martino, Frank appeared down on his luck.
Frank Sinatra was sitting in a chair, also waiting to see the president of Capitol Records, who was Alan Livingston. And I felt pretty bad for him because he was waiting in the lobby. I thought he was too big of a star to be waiting in the lobby for anyone.
We talked a bit, and Frank was very easy, kind of a pussycat. I mean, he was down and had problems. So we talked for a while, and I entered into a contract with him, and it was a one-year contract with 6 one-year options at the standard royalty with scale advance. I mean, it was like you'd sign a brand new artist that nobody ever heard of.
That contract would prove golden for both Capitol Records and Sinatra. But it was only the beginning. On August 5th, 1953, From Here to Eternity opened. The film was a box office and critical success.
Who's the broad? It's my sister.
Sinatra was back, according to film director Bud Yorkin.
And I'll never forget, he'd come back really for that From Here to Eternity, would switch his whole career when he finished that picture. It got him back, he was back on top again.
But Ava was uncomfortable with her husband's new fame.
Ava couldn't stand competition. When he became increasingly important, she felt increasingly ignored.
Broadway looks like Hollywood on an opening night.
For their fans, the couple put up a good front. At the 1953 film premiere of Mogambo in New York City, they smiled politely for the press. But within weeks, the MGM publicity department would issue a release announcing to the world the 2 stars had separated. In November of 1953, Sinatra's demons got the best of him. He checked into the hospital for complete physical exhaustion, severe weight loss, and emotional strain. The distraught Sinatra eventually recovered. Still weak and broken, he decided to travel to Spain to win back his estranged wife. But upon arrival, he discovered Eva was already on to her next man, another bullfighter, Luis Miguel Domingan.
She was carousing in Europe with men and pretty much flaunting relationships in Frank's face, the way Frank had flaunted his relationships in Nancy's face.
She's broke, but it's okay.
Frank Sinatra returned home frail and disappointed in love, but ready to take on Hollywood.
That is why the lady is a tramp.
When the True Hollywood story continues, Frank finds love in the arms of another superstar.
She was the kind of little girl lost that he needed in his life at that point.
And later, Frank pours his ring-a-ding cool into America's hottest party town. With one movie role in From Here to Eternity, 38-year-old Frank Sinatra resurrected his career but destroyed his marriage to film star Ava Gardner. It was the kind of comeback that could only happen in Hollywood, and Sinatra decided to take advantage of it. After falling into a professional abyss that nearly obliterated his singing career, Frank Sinatra got a second chance with Capitol Records in 1953. Studio musician Milt Bernhardt.
It was going to be a record company that was willing to try to open up a new look for somebody who had kind of run out elsewhere. Seemed to be the case with Sinatra.
Former Capitol President Alan Livingston knew Sinatra still had it, the old magic.
It was talent, and it was his music and his singing and nothing else. He was in the right place at the right time.
Indeed, 1953 was the year of Sinatra. It marked the beginning of the singer's legendary partnership with arranger Nelson Riddle. At their first rehearsal, the seasoned crooner took the young musician under his wing.
And about halfway through, Frank stopped singing, but I watched them, and Sinatra did this to Nelson. And Sinatra is doing all the talking, and he is animated as can be. Not angry, but doing a job of teaching, which came naturally for Sinatra.
This historic collaboration with Riddle and Capitol Records not only produced a host of memorable hits, but revived his singing career.
Frank was so pleased with that experience with Nelson that he stayed with him for many, many years after that. And it was a very good combination.
But Sinatra would complete his historic comeback with the greatest prize of all.
The winner is Frank Sinatra.
The Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor for his role as Private Maggio in From Here to Eternity. Fellow nominee Eddie Albert recalls the bittersweet moment.
I was up also, and so was he at the same time. Yes, and he won, and that it was wonderful for him, and it got him back on his feet, and he deserved it.
I'm deeply thrilled and very moved, and I really don't know what to say.
Actress Janet Leigh.
He did it, and it was wonderful, and he was brilliant, and he was nominated, and then he won, and the whole town was so happy for it.
I'd just like to say, however, that they're doing a lot of songs here tonight. Somebody asked me.
The 38-year-old actor had bucked the odds and proved all the experts wrong. Sinatra biographer J. Randy Taraborelli.
His career just skyrocketed from that time on because he had proven himself as an actor. He was clearly a great interpreter of popular music and getting better at it with each fight that he had with Ava Gardner.
Although separated in 1953, The couple's divorce wouldn't become final until 1957. But all of Sinatra's unrequited love songs in this period came from his broken heart, as actress Ruta Lee believes.
Every woman in America thought they were directed to her personally, but they were all directed to Ava.
It wasn't long before Sinatra eased his pain in the arms of another Hollywood legend, Marilyn Monroe. The two stars shared their misery, crying over their failed marriages. Marilyn's with baseball great Joe DiMaggio, and Frank's with Ava.
He needed somebody to take care of, and he needed somebody who was practically the antithesis of Ava Gardner. Somebody vulnerable, fragile, somebody like Marilyn Monroe.
Actress Debbie Reynolds.
I would think with Marilyn Monroe, probably Frank pursued her, and that she was so cute and kittenish sex, and also very vulnerable, and she would adore to be with Frank. I mean, that would make her so happy, to make him happy. That's the way Marilyn was with her sex. She gave it as her gift.
Frank and Marilyn's affair was a well-guarded secret, shared only with close friends.
The relationship with Marilyn Monroe was a very serious relationship. It was something that Frank did not want to exploit and turn into a circus.
But Frank decided not to become tied down so soon after Ava, so he cooled his romance with Marilyn and focused on his career. And with an Academy Award on his resume, Sinatra soon proved he was more than a one-shot acting wonder. In 1954, he starred as a ruthless killer in Suddenly, and next as a down-and-out songwriter in the romantic comedy Young at Heart. Frank earned rave reviews for both films. As Frank's career took off, so did his social life. Director Bud Yorkin remembers.
He was back out socially in town. He was with his guys. He was acclaimed the way he should have been. And as we say, Frank was back.
For Frank Sinatra, now approaching 40, the sporting life was about to begin.
Names make news, and so do these girls.
Well, he dated the world, for God's sake. You know, everybody wanted to be in his company because it's not just Frank Sinatra. It's the power that he exuded and that he had.
One of his conquests was a buxom young 19-year-old model and actress named Jeannie Carmen. She had desperately wanted to meet Sinatra and finally succeeded after sending him one of her sexiest photos.
I guess Frank had received the picture and heard that I was after his buns and all that. So he walked in and he took this look at me and he said, so we were invited to dinner at Abe Lipsey's house. So he looked at me and he said, "How did you do it, baby?" I said, "It wasn't easy, baby." And we just, you know, it was just friendship right off the bat. Well, it turned out to be a little more than that.
But no matter how hot the romance got, Carmen soon began to sense that something was missing.
He had great equipment, but he really didn't know what it was there for or what to do with it. Or maybe Ava had finished it up.
In fact, despite all of his professional triumphs, the lovelorn crooner never seemed to be happy.
When he's out with people, he appears to be happy. Once that door closes and he's alone, he's a different person. He just was a sad, sad person, and it comes through all the songs.
He had his melancholy moments, and he had to have his buddies around him. He did not like to be alone. That's why we made an album, which was his title, In the Wee Small Hours of the Morning.
It seemed no one could take the place of the former Mrs. Sinatra, Ava Gardner. Jeannie Carmen recalls one telling conversation with her romantic rival.
She said, "Are you taking good care of my Frankie?" I said, "Well, I'm giving it my best shot, but I don't think I'm doing as well as you because he's crying all the time." She said, "He loves to cry."
Even though Sinatra had little luck with his own relationships, he was not above offering advice. Debbie Reynolds recalls one incident while the stars were making their first movie together.
I remember one day Frank invited me to go to lunch when we were doing The Tender Trap, which was unusual, and I had just become engaged to Eddie Fisher, and he said he wanted to talk to me, so we went and had lunch, and he said, "Now listen, dear, I just have to advise you about this. Never marry a singer."
Despite the 40-year-old actor's escapades, he was the hottest thing in show business in 1955. That year, he scored as the streetwise Nathan Detroit in Guys and Dolls, and also as an addicted gambler in The Man with the Golden Arm. The drama earned him a second Academy Award nomination.
They tell me you was working here, and I was passing by. I thought I'd have a drink.
Oh, I've been here a while.
You doing any good?
All right. Smoke cut in the drink, you shall cut in the game.
Ain't got all night, Jack. Right.
By 1956, The Voice returned to the studio, and the music was as sensational as ever.
On the night that we did the album Songs for Swinging Lovers, if they had charged admission, they would have paid for the date easily. It's seated 200 and they were standing. And in the front were Lauren Bacall, the heads of a couple of picture studios. He was the Prince, the Pope.
His successes multiplied. Sinatra branched out on his own and formed his own movie company, Kent Productions. He produced his first film, a Western, Johnny Concho. Even when Sinatra wasn't producing, he wanted to call the shots. Legendary director Stanley Kramer remembers his first meeting with the star before the two began filming The Pride and the Passion.
He looked at me when there was a moment of silence and said, "Well, now, who the hell do you think you are? So you're the director, so what?"
Matters didn't improve when Sinatra arrived on the set in Spain in 1957. The star demanded special treatment and threw temper tantrums when he didn't get his own way. When the film fell behind schedule, Sinatra made it clear who was boss. The star left and returned to Hollywood.
It was a shock. Yeah, he moved out without a word of warning either.
To appease Sinatra, Stanley Kramer was forced to finish the film in California, where Sinatra was about to meet another powerful woman. As a full-fledged Hollywood star, he was invited to join a bunch of Beverly Hills good-timers who called themselves the Rat Pack.
Humphrey Bogart and Betty Bacall formed it. Humphrey was the, Bogey was the patriarch and Betty was the den mother.
Tales of their mischief and hell-raising are legendary. Together, these pals were united in their quest to break all the rules and set new limits for fun. But in 1957, when Bogart succumbed to cancer, Sinatra found himself suddenly close to his beautiful young widow, Lauren Bacall.
Frank did something that's the most dangerous occupation known to man. He dried a widow's tears. Frank and Bogey were very close friends, and Bogey died while Sinatra was very kind and gracious, and as I say, he dried her tears, and she fell in love with him.
The couple even planned to be married until Bacall's excitement got the better of her.
She made the mistake of telling Luella Parsons about it, and Luella printed it in the paper, and that was the end of it. Frank didn't like that, and they cut her off right then and there.
Basically, he just never called her again, and she had to pretty much take the hint that the engagement was over because she never saw him again. This devastated her.
But the Playboy was just getting started. Sinatra was about to sound the battle cry for the ring-a-ding 60s. Martinis, swizzle sticks, and broads.
So what's wrong with a little hey-hey?
When the True Hollywood story continues, the good times begin.
Bring on the girls. He had strippers coming into the bedroom stripping for us at home.
And the boys, Frank's new Las Vegas Rat Pack, become the kings of cool and party all night long.
Hey, why don't you have a little snack? What is it? Is it
Look at things here.
By the early 60s, Frank Sinatra's professional comeback was complete. He was riding a wave of hit films and albums and ready to conquer Vegas, the land of neon lights, big bucks, and big connections.
Welcome to the Sands Hotel. As Vice President in charge of entertainment, I hereby officially welcome you to this saloon.
In the early 1950s, Frank Sinatra made his first appearance in Las Vegas, then a tiny desert town. In 1954, with an eye for pleasure as well as profit, he purchased part ownership in one of the brightest spots on the Strip, the Sands Hotel, and his gamble paid off big. By the early 1960s, Las Vegas became the loudest, biggest, craziest party town in America. Former Las Vegas hotel maitre d' Neil O'Reiner.
Las Vegas was, it was like Camelot. It was exciting. It was a mystery place for most people.
And when Frank was in town, everyone wanted to join the party. Hollywood columnist James Bacon.
When Sinatra appeared up there, the whole town prospered. He was a swinging image of Las Vegas. In fact, he built Las Vegas.
She gets too hungry for dinner at 8. She loves the theater. Doesn't come late. Much.
By January 1960, the Sands Hotel became the epicenter of Frank's kingdom, a place fueled by booze, fast money, and women. Former Sands Bell captain Lou Pearl.
I saw women, gorgeous, gorgeous women, while he's walking through the hotel, going to the entrance, just stand in front of him, put their whole bodies in front of him, and look at him, and try to get him to yield of himself to them. And I'd see that night after night after night, and holy mackerel, what a spot to be in.
Frank and his drinking buddies routinely took over the Sands' famous Copa Room and made showbiz history. Sands showgirl Charlotte Nort.
He drew all the high society from New York. They flew in on jet planes. They called them junkets in those days, you know. They came in, and opening nights were minks, jewelry, long gowns.
Sinatra called his group the Summit, but the media named them the Rat Pack.
I run this mob with an iron hand, and you think that's easy carrying around an iron hand, you're nuts.
The pack included multi-talented song and dance men Dean Martin and Sammy Davis Jr., comedian Joey Bishop, and actor Peter Lawford, then brother-in-law to John F. Kennedy.
Hey, why don't you have a little snack?
The Rat Pack created a whole new brand of cool with their booze, women, and parties. Sands entertainer Dave Burton.
They're a group of guys who were so enthusiastic, fun-loving, that brought them together.
You brought them home.
They used to just fool around, get together, get on stage, and
I
just
told you working those trains are going to come in handy.
ad-lib.
You've been fooling around with my sister, and you ain't been paying. Is that right? Need the money on a dresser, Jocko.
It was their own personal playtime, according to Dean Martin's former wife, Jeannie.
These are heavyweights having a party all by themselves on the stage. They really do not pay any attention to the audience. They are addressing and looking and talking to and playing off each other.
When was the last time you was cut by a colored fella? Would that make me Jewish?
Sitting ringside were some of Hollywood's most famous faces. Actress Ruta Lee.
Frank's date one night was Marilyn Monroe. She just lit up a room when she walked in. It didn't matter what she was wearing, what she was saying, what she was doing. There was a glow about her, a shimmer that was just fabulous.
Charlotte, that crazy red jelly. That means it, baby. You got class, charm, personality. You got money. You have got money.
As soon as the show was over, that's when the real party began.
Frank would have tables set up in the lounge to make one big table, bottles of Jack Daniels, vodka, gin, you know, and glasses. And the people would be 4 and 5 deep watching them.
As the party proceeded, Frank became a big wheeler and dealer. Actress Debbie Reynolds.
What was wild, you were in the casino, and Dean, who always loved to play cards, and Frank and Sammy. They would all be out there playing cards. I even learned how to do it, play 21. I mean, deal 21. Of course, I let everybody win, and so did Frank and Dean. But the house didn't care because, I mean, the casino was packed.
As king of the Vegas Strip, Sinatra even used his clout to challenge the town's historic color barrier. Longtime friend Nick Savano.
They wouldn't allow Sammy Davis to drink with the guys.
And he went to Jack and Trotter, the host, and he said, if Sammy don't drink with us, we won't work here.
Frank's ultimatum worked, and he helped integrate the Sands. But even amid the glitter of Las Vegas, Sinatra's dark side frequently emerged.
Frank is a moody guy anyway, and when he gets something to be mad about it, he gets mad. He knows a lot of times that he's wrong in doing that, but that's him.
In one famous incident, he lost it in a restaurant when a waiter brought him a hamburger.
Frank took a look at it. He said, "What is this?" The man said, "Well, that's your hamburger." He said, "It's not my hamburger," picked it up and threw it about 30 feet across the restaurant.
Former record executive Alan Livingston.
He blew up very quickly. He had a very volatile temper, and he would do things when that happened, which he probably regretted later.
He will put you in a category that says you're an untouchable, and then after a while, it's all gone, and it's okay.
In February of 1960, things were better than just okay for the 45-year-old Sinatra and his pals. While performing at the Sands Hotel, the star produced the first of 4 movies starring the Rat Pack, Ocean's 11, a classic comedy in which Sinatra and his buddies rob Las Vegas casinos on New Year's Eve.
How'd it come off? Like a charm. Same here, fantastic.
Ocean's 11 was a huge success. But Sinatra wasn't content with just box office bounty. He expanded his kingdom, acquiring interests in airlines, radio stations, and real estate. Former Sinatra girlfriend Jeannie Carmen.
He wanted to be the big daddy. He wanted everything. He was so unbelievably ambitious. He wanted to be the biggest thing in the world.
That's why the lady, that's why the lady in the style.
As Sinatra's wealth and influence grew, he gained access to some of America's most powerful players, including Democratic presidential nominee John Kennedy. Peter Lawford, Kennedy's brother-in-law, introduced the two men. Sinatra biographer J. Randy Taraborelli.
Well, the smell of power attracted Frank to the Kennedys, and the smell of grease paint is what brought Jack to Sinatra.
In 1960, on the eve of the New Hampshire primary, JFK flew to Las Vegas to watch the Rat Pack perform. Sinatra, a committed Democrat, rallied behind the young senator's campaign. But Frank and Chicky Boy, as Sinatra liked to call the presidential hopeful, shared more than just politics.
Jack was using him for thrills. Jack was using him to get babes. To get women, to procure sexual favors.
Kennedy was more than eager to sample Las Vegas attractions.
I took him past the pool where all the girls were swimming and everything, and boy, he was running back to that pool. He didn't know from nothing. He wanted to get to that pool in the worst way.
Throughout the 1960 presidential campaign, Sinatra worked closely with the Kennedy camp.
Frank's relationship with JFK was very complex because Frank considered JFK to be a buddy, and JFK considered Frank to be an asset.
At the same time Sinatra wooed JFK, he also built a relationship with a major power behind the scenes in Las Vegas, Chicago crime boss Sam Giancana.
His relationship with the mob was really no different than his relationship with the Kennedys in the sense that it was about power and it was about thrills and danger.
The crime boss was well aware of Sinatra's ties to JFK and his father, Joe Kennedy, according to his own nephew and namesake, Sam Giancana.
He wanted Frank Sinatra to pull out all the stops to try to help get Jack Kennedy elected because Sam Giancana had already obtained a promise from Joe Kennedy that he would have the ear of the president.
And to increase mob leverage over the future president, Sam Giancana devised a scheme involving Sinatra.
Sam Giancana wanted someone to compromise, some woman to be able to compromise Jack Kennedy. And really that opportunity came about through Frank Sinatra when Frank Sinatra introduced Judith Campbell Exner to Jack Kennedy.
In February 1960, Sinatra's friend, model actress Judith Campbell Exner, was not only introduced to Kennedy during his Las Vegas visit, but also to mob boss Giancana. This three-way friendship earned her an extraordinary place in history, as actress Ruta Lee remembers.
She would tell me when I'd see her that I'm going to Washington and I'm going to be seeing Jack, is what she called him, not Mr. President, and then romantically. And then she'd say, and then after that, I'm going to Chicago, and I'll be seeing Sam romantically.
In November of 1960, John Kennedy squeaked by Richard Nixon to become the nation's Camelot president. JFK didn't forget his pal Frank. Sinatra was given the honor of producing Kennedy's inaugural gala.
He organized all the entertainment. He produced the show, basically.
But Frank's joy was quickly dampened when his pal, fellow Rat Packer Sammy Davis Jr., was uninvited from the big event. JFK caved into pressure from conservative senators who disapproved of Davis's interracial engagement to Swedish actress May Britt. Sinatra, though devastated, went on with the show.
He would have done anything for the Kennedys, because not only did he like the power that they had, not only was he sort of dazzled by the Kennedy aura, but Frank was eager to do all these things.
On January 20th, 1961, Frank Sinatra brought Hollywood to the nation's capital. It was a night to remember, as gala participant Janet Lee explains.
We all marched in, so we had to coordinate that, and then you know, the rehearsal and the logistics. It was unbelievable because of the number of people and the big orchestra.
On stage were many of Hollywood's and Broadway's finest, including Harry Belafonte, Ethel Merman, Tony Curtis, and Milton Berle.
He was right there with JFK. Great pictures of Frank and JFK exist. Smiling faces, buddy boys all the way, you know, pallies to the end.
The kid from Hoboken had reached the pinnacle of power, sitting next to the President of the United States. But Sinatra would soon experience personal disappointments and pay the price for fame. When the True Hollywood story continues, Frank mourns the loss of a friend.
When he was killed, it was devastating. Frank was devastated by it.
And later, Frank's world is turned upside down.
He was convinced that this was a kidnapping case and that it was not a hoax.
While the youth culture of America in the 1960s was defined by sit-ins, be-ins, and love-ins, middle-age culture was defined by Frank, Dean, Sammy, Peter, and Joey. It was a martini-soaked culture, and Frank owned it.
Lights! Lights! How'd it come off? Like a charm.
In 1961, at the age of 46, Frank Sinatra was the king of the Las Vegas Strip and a box office favorite, with films like Pepe and The Devil at 4 O'Clock. The ambitious star wanted to take his music career in a new direction. Sinatra decided it was time to start his own record company. After a series of legal battles, Frank left Capitol Records. Sinatra's parting words were anything but pleasant, as former record executive Alan Livingston remembers.
He said, Alan, go, watch yourself. And absolutely just tore into me. And he said, I'm going to tear down the Capitol Tower. And he said, I'll never record for Capitol or you or anything else, and screamed at me.
Sinatra went on to create his own label, Reprise Records. Rat Pack pals Dean Martin and Sammy Davis Jr. joined the ranks. In 1962, the actor and his friends scored again in Sergeants 3, an outrageous comedy about the Old West. Filming in the small town of Kanab, Utah, the Rat Pack at first seemed out of sorts. Longtime friend and co-star Ruta Lee.
Dean Martin said, "Welcome, baby. There's nothing to do in this town
But on Saturday nights, we walk up to the Dairy Queen, and then we walk to the other end of town and watch them give haircuts, and that's it.
But the remote location didn't stop Sinatra and his pals from finding their own fun. Co-star Jeannie Carmen.
They were always drinking, 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 and they could drink until the cows came home.
While Sinatra's Rat Pack films were audience favorites, they were not critical successes. But Sinatra proved himself an actor once again in the 1962 political thriller, The Manchurian Candidate. Despite the star's phenomenal success, Frank still had not found another woman to replace his lost love, Ava Gardner. Former girlfriend Jeannie Carmen believes the star was too self-absorbed.
Nobody loved Frank as much as Frank. If he could have married himself, he'd have had a great time.
But Frank didn't need to be married to have a great time. He soon found romance with Juliet Prowse, a dancer whom he met while filming the 1959 movie Can-Can. In February of 1962, Sinatra proposed to Prowse. The couple's engagement stumped many of Frank's closest friends, recalls his former publicist, Lee Solters.
Juliet Prowse had just leveled off as far as career, image, reputation, and all that. And what I was told, he announced their engagement only to give her that punch of publicity.
But Debbie Reynolds sees it a different way.
You don't have a romance that is totally sexual for publicity. He was crazy about her. She wrapped those long legs around him. He was a happy Italian.
Long legs notwithstanding, Sinatra laid down the law.
Frank told her that she couldn't work, that he didn't want her to work, and she said, well, I mean, this is my dream, is to be an actress and a dancer, that I would be miserable not working. He said, well, then the engagement's off.
This would be the first of many disappointments the star would face in 1962. In February of that year, Sinatra went to great lengths to equip his Palm Springs home for a visit from his buddy, President John Kennedy. Sinatra biographer J. Randy Taraborelli.
He was like a starstruck fan with a lot of money who would do anything to put in new phone lines for the Secret Service. I mean, ridiculous things that for Sinatra excess was never enough.
At the last minute, JFK had a change of plans. Hollywood columnist James Bacon.
All of a sudden, JFK wasn't going to stay at Frank's house. He stayed at Bing Crosby's house, which was, Bing was a Republican.
Sinatra was furious and lashed out at his Kennedy connection, Peter Lawford.
He never spoke to Peter Lawford after that. Peter Lawford was only the messenger.
Sinatra blamed Attorney General Bobby Kennedy for the fiasco. Bobby had concerns about Sinatra's friendship with crime boss Sam Giancana. Hollywood columnist James Bacon provides another explanation.
Actually, it was Kenny O'Donnell who was the chief of staff. And Kenny himself told me this. He says he took one look at Sinatra's house and says it's not safe. So Secret Service cannot protect it.
Frank never got over it. He just seethed for years. It was like, this can't be happening to me. I'm Frank Sinatra.
The star's losses were just beginning to pile up. In the summer of 1962, Sinatra was deeply worried about his friend, Marilyn Monroe. Sinatra desperately wanted to rescue the glamour girl from her own self-destructive habits, pills and booze.
When Marilyn implied that she was going to commit suicide, Frank sprung into action.
1 week before the star died, Marilyn visited Sinatra at his Lake Tahoe casino and resort, Cal Neva.
Many people have speculated that Marilyn was brought there by Frank Sinatra to have sex parties and drug orgies. Nothing could be further from the truth.
In fact, Sinatra even contemplated marriage.
That if she was Mrs. Frank Sinatra, nobody would mess with her.
In August of 1962, at the age of 36, Marilyn Monroe died from a mysterious drug overdose.
One of the most famous stars in Hollywood history is dead at 36.
Marilyn's death devastated Frank. But even with all his heartaches, the 48-year-old star continued to ring and ding. In 1963, Sinatra played a swinging bachelor in the hit comedy Come Blow Your Horn. According to director Bud Yorkin, Sinatra lived up to his image as the swinging single guy.
You know, he had in his contract that at 5 o'clock it was over. He was done shooting because he considered 5 o'clock cocktail hour.
On the set, one of Sinatra's old friends came to visit, crime boss Sam Giancana.
He was very quiet, didn't say a word. I mean, Frank introduced me to him, and that was fine. And Frank said, "Here, pull up a chair, Sam." And he did, and he was.
But Giancana's next visit to the star's Cal Neva resort would cost Sinatra his dream. During the summer of 1963, the mobster's unannounced stay at the Lake Tahoe retreat prompted an investigation by the Nevada State Gaming Commission. According to state officials, the mobster was not welcome in Nevada. Former FBI agent Dean Elson explains.
State of Nevada had a black book. In the black book, they had the names of 40 individuals. These were the top hoodlums in the United States. If they showed themselves in the state of Nevada, law enforcement officials, local law enforcement officials, were to immediately arrest them. Sam Giancana was one of the individuals listed in the black book.
The gaming board was notified that Giancana was spotted at Cal Neva. That spelled trouble for Frank.
He and Ed Olson, who was the chairman of the Gaming Control Board in Nevada, had some real hot words with each other, even to the point of just yelling at each other.
Those hot words landed Sinatra in big trouble. He faced a disciplinary hearing, putting his gaming license in jeopardy.
You develop a temper when you have all that adulation, you know, you get spoiled.
To make matters worse, Sinatra was about to close a deal with Warner Brothers for the sale of his record company, Reprise. As part of the agreement, Sinatra was to become a partner at Warner Records. Jack Warner, then head of Warner Brothers, didn't like the negative publicity. He wanted Sinatra to surrender his gaming license or call off the deal. Under extreme pressure, Sinatra terminated his license.
Well, he was devastated. He felt he would like to do what he wants to do. Well, there are times you can't.
It was the end of a dream. Sinatra lost his interest in Cal Neva and the jewel in his crown, the Sands Hotel in Las Vegas. When the True Hollywood story continues, Frank Sinatra faces a family crisis and later finds love in the arms of a flower child.
He wore beads. You know, it was in the heydays of hippies. Frank wore beads.
Frank Sinatra learned the hard way about the bittersweet pleasures of fame and fortune. He lost friends, lovers, and his dream, the Sands Hotel. But 1963 would bring the star even more pain and closer to the brink of disaster. On November 22, 1963, Frank Sinatra was in Chicago filming his last Rat Pack film, Robin and the Seven Hoods. On the set, he received shocking news. His friend, President John Kennedy, had been gunned down by an assassin's bullet. Despite Sinatra's sour relationship with JFK, he was deeply saddened by the president's death. The star realized even the most powerful man in the world could be destroyed. Sinatra biographer J. Randy Taraborelli.
Frank always felt that maybe it might have worked out between them and their relationship could have been saved. So when he was killed, it was devastating.
Grief-stricken, Sinatra was about to face his own devastating crisis.
The horrifying ordeal of Frank Sinatra Jr. began while he was filling an engagement at Lake Tahoe. He was
on December 8, 1963, while performing at Lake Tahoe, 19-year-old son Frank Jr. was confronted by armed assailants. 23-year-old Barry Keenan from Beverly Hills and his partner Joe Amsler knocked on Frank Jr.'s door.
I said, "I have a delivery for you, for Frank Sinatra," and I pretended like I didn't know who he was and all that stuff. And I pulled a gun out and cocked it in his face and said, "Don't move," and nobody would get hurt.
Frank Jr. was being kidnapped. Sinatra got the news while in Palm Springs. He flew to Reno, Nevada, where he met with the authorities. Former FBI agent Dean Elson questioned the worried father. The FBI wanted to make sure the kidnapping wasn't a publicity stunt.
He was convinced that it was not a hoax. And I said, "Frank, how do you know that?" And he said, "Well, Frank Jr. would never do this to his mother."
Keenan, his partner, and Frank Jr. left Nevada at once. They made it back to a Los Angeles hideaway after eluding the police for days. A courier dropped off the $240,000 ransom. Keenan planned to split the money with his two partners.
When we had the money, we all decided to go our separate ways and see if we could avoid being captured.
At Mrs. Sinatra's Bel Air home, there's an atmosphere of thanks and rejoicing.
Within days, the kidnappers were apprehended, and Frank Jr. returned home to his mother and a sea of reporters.
When did you first know he was safe? When did you?
I never knew that he was safe until I saw him.
How do you feel now? How do you feel now, Mrs. Sinatra?
Just beautiful, thank you. And may we be excused.
Keenan spent 4.5 years in prison for his crime. Today, a successful businessman, he puts to rest the rumor which was fueled at the trial and haunted the Sinatra family throughout the whole painful ordeal.
It was not a hoax. He's, understandably not delighted to have been kidnapped, and it was a nightmare for him. And I think it's bothered him to this day that people still think there was something screwy about it.
After the terrifying episode, the actor found salvation in the good life. Still a Hollywood bachelor, Frank always made the rounds with a beautiful woman on his arm. The list included Natalie Wood, Dorothy Provine, and Jill St. John. In 1964, Sinatra directed his first feature film, None But the Brave. He followed up that success by starring in Von Ryan's Express. And it was on the set of Von Ryan's Express that he met a shy 20-year-old flower child and the next love of his life, Mia Farrow, the star of the hit television drama Peyton Place. For the middle-aged actor, it was love all over again. Despite their 30-year age difference, Mia was mesmerized by Sinatra. Mia's friend and playwright, Leonard Gersh.
She was crazy about it. Well, he was Frank Sinatra, and she was very young, and I don't think Frank Sinatra meant to her what it did to people of my generation.
Peyton Place co-star Ryan O'Neal watched as Frank did his best to fit in with Mia's younger friends.
I got to know him at that time because she brought me into their relationship, and he was a wonderful man, and he was wonderful to her, and I think she adored him.
In a 1997 interview, Tina Sinatra spoke about friend Mia Farrow's relationship with her father.
She represented something to him he was leaving, and that was youth. I mean, he was 50 years old. It's so cliche, it sounds so ridiculous and so predictable. And you'd think everybody at the time would have just known better, but on the other hand, look at how great it was.
Sinatra had experienced his share of tumultuous relationships. With Mia, he found a moment of serenity. But, as always, the press found him.
They were stalked. There were always people around. But he took it more seriously than she did. It didn't really bother her. She just felt they were doing their job.
But in July of 1966, outside the glare of camera lights, the couple secretly tied the knot on Frank's home turf in Las Vegas. Even Sinatra's children weren't invited to the wedding. They heard the news from Dean Martin.
He took me into his sanctuary, into that den, and said, I want you to know that your dad is marrying Mia as we speak. And, you better tell your mother.
But Mia was out of place in Frank's world. The flash and glitter of Las Vegas didn't seem to agree with the shy young actress. Sands Hotel bell captain Lou Pearl.
She was the meekest little thing you ever met. So meek, so quiet. And Frank was never quiet. In his best day, was he ever quiet?
As Sinatra's wife, the young Mia had difficulties handling Frank's entourage and playing the adult hostess, as her friend Rock Brenner recalls.
There were encounters with some of the guests who were jockeying for the best seat at the dinner table every night, and who blamed Mia, sometimes even viciously, for not giving this or that wife the prime seat next to Frank.
The difference in the star's age and lifestyle began to take a toll on their marriage. Mia Farrow's friend, Maria Roach.
Mia felt she could somehow free Frank of his demons, and I think she had hoped if she could make his life better or whatever, you know, that dark side would go away.
But Frank's dark side didn't go away. In 1967, the proud star suffered a crushing blow in the town he'd helped build, Las Vegas. Following another performance at the Sands, Sinatra was refused credit in the hotel casino.
I wouldn't be too boisterous if I were you, because I've been known to do some very strange things in the middle of a show.
The furious star considered this a personal insult and took matters into his own hands. Former Sinatra security guard Don Crutchfield.
And he jumps off on a golf cart and drives right through a plate glass window. Well, that ended his association with the Sands, I gotta say.
But Sinatra wasn't finished. He confronted hotel manager Carl Cohn.
How about one of these when you burn?
Frank called him every name under the sun. And it looked like he was going to pick up the table and tip it over on Carl. So Carl was smartly got out of the booth and just walked over him and just smacked him one, that's all. Knocked two teeth out.
Frank walked out of the Sands Hotel and never performed there again. The star's personal life was also spinning out of control. In 1967, Mia was completing work on the movie Rosemary's Baby. The film was behind schedule, which infuriated Sinatra. He demanded his wife walk off the picture so she could co-star in his next film, The Detective.
You don't just get up and walk out on a picture. And I think it was the final thing that Frank felt he just didn't want to be married anymore, and I'd lost control of her.
He divorced me because of that. He said, if you do that picture, I'll divorce you. And she did the picture, and he divorced her.
Sinatra's lawyer delivered the news right on the set of Rosemary's Baby. It was a shocking moment, as Mia's colleague Bill Fraker remembers.
And right there in front of us, he handed her the divorce papers, their divorce papers. She said, "What is this, McGann?" He said, "Well, you read it, it's from Frank." And she says, "No, it's not going to happen." He says, "Yes, it is." And she sat down right there, crying like a baby. It was like a little baby.
For the third time, Frank Sinatra struck out at marriage.
He wanted it when he wanted it. And when you do that, there is no compromise. It's his way or no way.
As the 1960s came to a close, Frank Sinatra began to wrap up his Hollywood career. He would go on to make a few films, playing a wisecracking private eye in Tony Rome,
Ring-a-ding-ding-ding,
and a thieving rascal in Dingus McGee. But in 1971, at the age of 56, Frank Sinatra decided to leave the limelight and go out a winner. That year, the king of show business announced his retirement and took his final bow. Or did he? When the E! True Hollywood story continues, some final words on the man behind the music.
You treat a dame like a lady, and treat a lady like a dame.
Long live Sinatra. We love him.
Now, come on, now watch it. This is a big moment in my life. You've had a few, too.
With over 50 films under his belt and over 1,400 recordings to his name, Frank Sinatra retired in 1971. But the 56-year-old chairman of the board wasn't finished yet. In 1971, Frank Sinatra put his Hollywood career behind him and concentrated on his extensive charity work.
He truly believes in charity. He has been blessed, and he blesses people.
But the public demanded Old Blue Eyes return. By 1973, the 57-year-old crooner was back on stage, entertaining fans.
You know, I'm the kind of fella who likes to keep busy. It's said anyway.
He gets excited again, he gets a rush, an exhilarating rush, and he's ready to go.
After years of playing the Hollywood Romeo, Frank finally found love in 1976 with his fourth wife, former showgirl Barbara Marx. For nearly half a century, Frank Sinatra survived every musical fad, his battles with the press, and some of Hollywood's stormiest romances. His Hollywood is now a memory. The women are gone. Lana, Marilyn, and Ava Gardner, the beauty who captured Frank's heart. The former Mrs. Sinatra remained close to her soulmate until her death in 1990.
She put in a jukebox and put all of Frank's records in, and she'd go over there whenever she was feeling blue and sit there and listen to Frank's records.
Gone also are the days of Ring-a-Ding-Ding and Frank's pals, Rat Packers Dean, Sammy, and Peter.
There were times, fun times, that we'll never see again. We'll never see those times again.
Francis Albert Sinatra went to what he called the Big Casino on May 14, 1998. But for many, Frank Sinatra's voice and talent will always remain the standard by which all other performers will be measured.
He leaves us with the absolute greatest love songs, the greatest voice of all time.
So brilliant that he lasted all those decades because we all love his talent, his voice, his performing.
He had his own set of rules, and he lived by them, and he didn't vary. He didn't care what anybody thought, and that's Frank Sinatra.
The star's creed was all or nothing, even when it meant the end of his dreams. Frank Sinatra was a man who did things his way.
There's only one Frank. Nobody says Frank who. They know it's Frank Sinatra. He had a way about him nobody could match.
Pardon me, but I gotta run. The facts uncommonly clear. I gotta find who's now the number one, and why my angel eyes ain't here. Excuse me while I disappear.